Chapter 28. S. The constant compression of water squeezing against his body gave him a feeling of claustrophobia. The pressure forced him to reinforce his extremities with will, else it would crush him. Especially his shoulder that now ended in charred flesh. His muscles would have long since tired too much, pushed back otherwise. Who could they stand to live down here? The chamber he was in was carved out of the strange cement-like secretions of the lightless reef. A pillar of cement rose from the center of the room, where Absoloth had perched. There was a dim ambient light emitted by thin strands of bioluminescent algae which lined the walls and floor. He imagined this was for the rare times they had visitors, as the Arkuth were blind. Had Absoloth thought to test him by ordering him to remain here while he dealt with the humans? Selez gritted his teeth. This was a small price to pay to have Absoloth exact vengeance on them. He thought about his missing arm. He had kept trying to reach for things with it, forgetting it was gone. Sometimes it would feel like he had an inch on his missing arm. He was getting that sensation now, so he focused on the space where it would have existed, trying to force his brain to catch up. When he returned to Nagara, he would ask the priestesses of Azrea what could be done, but for now he had to tolerate it. That damn itching, he gritted his teeth. He heard a grunt. Talenth and Bakrant were kneeling behind him, gritting their teeth as they too fought the forces threatening to crush them. They had stood by him at the island and had remained loyal now. True, he had no real position of power over them, but they knew how to give him the respect his line was due. They knew he would carry them upwards with his own rise through the Naga hierarchy. Surely, after performing the song, his calling would be one of leadership. His mother was the first of Azrea, after all. When they had seen the crash and then watched the exile save the human, he knew it was the perfect opportunity. He had thought to secure the call of leadership through showing initiative, by upholding the laws of the Naga. When he had seen the Tide Sword, it was all but guaranteed. So what if the island was off limits? That damn wizard! How could a human be so strong? Selez had never felt so weak, so humiliated. He remembered the constricting, suffocating sand and the almost painless sundering of his arm, the thunk it made when it hit the sand, the crazy wizard casually commenting on saving it for a meal. He ground his teeth. He would ask Absoloth to allow him the honor of returning the Tide Sword to Nagara. Surely he would allow that. Someone had to carry it back, and he had found it. Selez felt the disturbance in the water first and straightened his back, just before the huge tentacled form of Absoloth dropped into the chamber from the unlit darkness above. He perched on the column, letting his tentacles hang down against the pillar. Selez had been a little taken aback when he first met the Arkuth. Their forms were unsettling. They had been warped by the darkness that surrounded them, and yet they were Naga. Each year, 1 in 10 of the newborn Naga underwent the rite of Arkuth, also known as the Darkening. They were then sent to the lightless reef to adapt and become Uth. It was also used as a punishment for Naga who committed heinous crimes. It was an effective deterrent. No one wanted to be added to the Deep Watch. Absoloth said nothing, just stared at Selez with unseeing white orbs. After waiting for some time, Selez cleared his gills, then spoke. Tide Lord, have the humans been punished? Has the Tide Sword been reclaimed? Selez spoke in the audible intonations the Naga of the Shallows used to communicate amongst each other. Absaloth responded directly into his mind in the Arkuth way. No. We have reached a new covenant. Seles's eyes widened, and his gills quivered with quickened intake. Tidlord, the exile violated her sentence and helped the human. The human stole a tide sword. Surely you have verified the truth. I have spoken to the Old One. By right, the tide armament belongs to him. You invaded his domain and committed violence. You stole a tide armament. You led others to do the same. Absaloth paused a moment. I have granted the humans safe passage through Naga waters for so long as they cause no violence and commit no sacrilege. I have honored the exile's blood oath of vengeance on her procreator. But they are humans. Celes started to get angry. You would let them defile these waters? You would let them use a tide sword against us? A tentacle flashed forward, slamming into Celes's face like an anvil. He felt scales crack and then pain. Nagara has failed you. Who are you who has not ever been given a calling to question me? Absaloth's tentacle hung in the water near Celes, threatening. No. It is not my duty to educate you. Minnow, who has sponsored you? Celes was fuming. The pain in his cheek, the disrespect of this monster. Celes couldn't wait to see its face when he answered. I have been sponsored by the first of Azrea, Celes smirked. When she heard how he had been treated, I will make sure she hears of how we have been treated. The white orbs widened. Talon, Vagrant. Loyalty is admirable, but Celes is not yet your superior to give you orders. You will not be permitted to perform the song. You will now leave this chamber and wait. Where is your honor? Punishing them because you can't take direct action against me? Alanth and Bergrant couldn't keep the shock off their faces, but they nodded, then got off the floor and exited the chamber. Absaloth waited until they had left to speak. You think claiming her name shields you? Because you are of Namira's brood? She was foolish to sponsor one of her own. She has fostered entitlement with her nepotism. How dare you insult? A tentacle lashed out impossibly fast and wrapped around his face, choking him. It is obvious now. I must intervene. To allow you to perform the song would be to diminish all Naga. You are banned from performing the song or receiving a calling. Instead, you will deliver a message stone to Namira. You will tell her of your transgressions. You will inform her that those humans have safe passage, that the exile's blood oath is to be honored, and that the tide sword is to be carried by the human. He knew to strike at a Tide Lord was death, but he was consumed by anger. Celes raged and pushed against the choking tentacles with all his force, yet it remained indomitable. I sense your rage at me, minnow. The white orb seemed to slightly constrict in mirth. Do not return to these waters until you have directed it inward. The tentacle constricted, closing around his gills, and everything went black. Absaloth produced a recording stone from his pocket, activated it, and recorded his message for Namira. Take him outside and give this to the others. Order them to bring both back to Nagara. The stone must be placed directly into Namira's hands. His voice no longer appeared to be shouting, as those nearby were other Arkuth, fully acclimated to the transmissions. Yes, Tide Lord. Two Deep Watch Octans dropped from the ceiling. One extended a tentacle to gently remove the stone from Absaloth's hand. The other scooped up Selez. They both silently exited the chamber. Dayruth. Figure materialized, floating directly between where Selez had been kneeling and where Absaloth sat on the column. It looked exactly like a miniature version of Absaloth. It turned and met his gaze. The smaller Absaloth's right eye was filled with color, pupil dilated in the dim light. Yes? You forgot one of the eyes again. The figure gave a small bow. I wouldn't actually want to think I was you. Oh, I wouldn't want anyone to actually think I was you. Someone might get the idea I actually want your position. The figure started to shift again. The bulky tentacles contracted back toward the center mass, reforming into a more humanoid shape. Thick, webbed hands and feet, rubbery smooth skin, graying tentacles coming off the back of his head, thick gill ridges behind the back of his ears and neck. He was clearly a sepia naga, but his squid features were far more pronounced and thicker than Ina's. His face was largely featureless, save for a vertical slash scar over his left eye, which was milky white. There was also a subtle grayness and wrinkling to his skin that a naga would recognize as signs of aging. He wore what looked like a hoodless poncho, covering him below the neck, sometimes fluttering up briefly to expose his feet. It shifted around him, changing its contours in a way that made it seem his form underneath was constantly changing. Indeed, and who would want to deal with Namira's foolish spawn? Replied Absaloth. You heard our conversation? Every word, my lord. Would you agree this has not been the end of young Selez's foolishness? I would. Should I follow? No. Absaloth produced a clear bulb and then held it under his mouthicles. When he withdrew it, it was filled with black inky liquid. Want you to mark the humans. He tossed the bulb through the water. As it reached Dayruth, the poncho fluttered and it disappeared. Inform your brother of the new covenant. He may no longer use violence, and the Tide Sword is now off limits. Of course, my lord, he nodded. And Dayruth, if Selez does something foolish, try not to kill him. Namira must not place any blame with us. Yes, Tide Lord. Achievement. Dishonored. How could the god of this world, who knows all, brand him so? Attacking the humans had been the only sane choice. They defiled the water with their filth. They should be purged, and any who helped them should face the same. And the Tide Sword, to see the relic wielded by pink fleshy hands, was an abomination. Selez noticed the pressure of the deep had abated, and he was being pulled along in the water. He opened his eyes. Talenth was dragging him with Bagrant swimming alongside. Talenth felt him stir and released him. Absaloth commanded we accompany you back to Nagara, and gave me a message stone to present to the first. Talenth spoke steadily. Celes, you have led us astray. We should not have followed you. Begrant spat. Do you two honestly believe we should have done nothing with the transgressions we witnessed? How could I have known the Tide Sword had been bequeathed to a human? We should have reported it to the Deep Watch and let them decide what to do, like I wanted to, said Begrant. So now the Deep Watch knows, and they decide to protect the humans, allow them to break the laws, and run around with a sacred relic? Do we think the first would allow that? Celes knew that if we went back empty-handed at this point, it would be years before he was allowed to perform the song. But humans, by their nature, were violent, profane beings. It was only a matter of time before they broke the covenant. There's nothing we can do now. The Tide Lord has commanded us to Nagara. The first can decide what to do when we get there, said Talenth. And we will. But he didn't say we had to go straight there. If we were to check in on the humans on the way and witness them breaking the covenant, we could intervene. Celes, you led us astray once more. You lead us astray once more. Talenth, we should not deviate, said Begrant. Begrant, they will be passing by a tidal womb soon. Should the humans not be monitored to ensure they do not taint the sacred pools? If they don't, we will leave and go straight to Nagara. Begrant looked unsure. Celes continued. I will give you and Talenth all the credit and take all the blame if anything goes wrong. What if they do taint the pools and it is known that we could have prevented it? I'll even advocate with the first to allow both of you to perform the song this cycle. There will still be time to catch the last Coriacea. Begrant thought for a moment. Fine. Talenth nodded. Celes took the lead and adjusted course. They passed the sharks feasting on drowned gaunts, then picked up the scent of the human raft. It was moving slow, and they soon caught up with it as the sun was starting to set. A white reef shark had also picked up the scent and was meandering near, hoping a meal would emerge. The raft was a thing of shoddy workmanship, Celes noted. There was good odds they would all drown in the first storm they encountered, but he wasn't going to leave it to chance. The decision was made not to rest, and they shadowed it through the night. The smell of sulfur hit them first, and then it appeared. A light in the distance approaching the raft. Celes silently signaled the trio to drop back. From below the water, they could see that shadow of the thing that approached. A giant, bloated mass of flesh with fins. It looked to be around 70 feet long. Its exterior was not smooth, but lined with fleshy ridges, like a painting that had melted, causing the smooth lines to drip and clump. Its dorsal fin thinned into a pole that emerged out of the water, hanging forward in a curve over its head, somehow creating a light that illuminated the water over its gaping mouth. The mouth itself was filled with rows of humongous, jagged teeth. Celes had never seen anything like it, but he had heard stories of abyssal monsters that the Deep Watch prevented from entering Naga waters. The light this one created only linked to one of them, light eaters. As it approached the raft, Celes felt a twinge of hesitation. Did they deserve to be consumed by that thing? But he pushed it from his mind and waited. The light eater actually brushed up against the raft, but did not strike. Celeste watched as it floated there, and its lower jaw unhinged, extending out and under the spotlight above. Then he felt an urge to move towards the light. He shook his head and resisted. Talent started to move forward, and Celeste grabbed his tail and pulled him back. Stop, Celeste signaled. Talent looked confused, but waited. Then they saw the reef shark approach the light. It crossed an invisible threshold, and the jaw burst upwards, creating a flurry of obscuring bubbles. As they cleared, the shark was gone and the mouth was closed. It floated there, working its jaw in shallow movements, letting out a few bubbles, then started forward. As big and ungainly as it looked, it moved with unnatural speed. If this thing noticed them, there would be no escape, but it was satiated and continued on. As its light faded out, it disappeared into the dark. The next morning, they watched the raft make landfall on the tidal womb island. Celeste led them over to the channel that led to the lagoon. As they reached the entrance, an unmistakable scent was picked up by all three. Celeste made intentional eye contact with each of them. The humans had violated the sacred pools. You were right, said Bagrant. To make a covenant with humans was foolish. It was obvious they would violate it the second they had the opportunity, Celeste gloated. We follow protocol this time, Bagrant said. As he grabbed his shell horn and put it to his lips, he blew. A sustained baritone note emanated out into the water. It would call any Naga in the area to arms.